Hey everyone, Mo here, and before the video begins, I just want to let you guys know that my schedule has opened up for me to do coaching again. So if you're interested in private one-on-one coaching for me to help you, whether you're a newer player and you want to excel at the game very quickly and learn the fundamentals without developing any bad habits early, or if you're an experienced player who's already maybe platinum or diamond in your top 1%, but you need some help filling in the gap to get you to that 0.01%, to make you just some of the best, then hit me up on Discord and I can get you in some private one-on-one coaching lessons to help you polish up any skills you want to refine and help you learn all of the secrets to becoming a top player. That's it. I hope you enjoy the video. Hey everybody, Mo here, bringing you guys another episode of Meta Monday. So this week's a little bit of a special week, special, because it's the last week before seasonal championships, which means it's the last week to qualify for seasonals if you aren't already qualified. The last chance gauntlet was this last weekend, so congrats to everybody that qualified through your last chance gauntlet. Unfortunately, for those of you that did not qualify through your last chance gauntlet, you have to do it through ranked. Fortunately, you just came to the best place to tell you what to play for ranked ladder. I'm going to give you guys all the statistics of what the most played decks are on ladder and give you guys, hopefully that will help you determine what deck you want to use to grind ladder to get that top 700 spot in your respective region. I don't know what the cutoff is right now. I think in Americas the cutoff is going to be like 100 LP or something like that, like not too high if I'm not mistaken. I can't really talk much about the other regions because I don't actively play in those or pay attention to the top 700 needed for those regions because I can't play in those regions. So we're gonna go over the top 8 most played decks here in Masters ladder, and then you guys can use that knowledge to kind of figure out what the best deck to play is to try and get that LP so you can qualify for seasonals and play in that. So before we get into the video, I wanted to remind you guys that 70% of the people that watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to me. So if you guys could do me a huge favor, I'd really appreciate it if you guys could click the subscriber button. We're really close to 5,000 subs. And it would mean a lot to me if we could hit that sub goal, and yeah, and then because bigger number, better person, obviously. But no, it'd be really awesome. That milestone would be awesome to hit. So yeah, that's it for the intro. Now let's get into the statistics. So coming in at number 1, the most played deck in Masters ladder right now is Darkness, which is pretty surprising. I didn't think Darkness was that good, honestly. As you see here, I'll pull the deck list up on the screen for you guys. Oh, come on. Deck list up on the screen for you guys. And that's going to be 1 mini morph and 2 vengeance there on the bottom right. I know you can't really see it. And yeah, so this deck is supposedly going 50-50 with other RE Kinnan decks. I remember a couple weeks ago, if not last week, people were saying that Darkness was favored into RE Kinnan, and I was saying that like good Darkness players were good into bad RE Kinnan players. But if you get good RE Kinnan players playing against good Darkness players, it'll probably be 50-50 or even RE Kinnan favored. And that's what the statistics are coming out to be. You saw here on the matchups back here, it says the best win rate, or your best matchups against like RE Kinnan is only 50%. There you go. This very much seems like a deck where if you are the better player, you will win a majority of the time. Just by outvaluing your opponent and playing well. It kind of reminds me of Draven Ezreal. How Draven Ezreal was kind of just really good into very few things, but it was okay or decent into basically everything, and had a really close to like 50-50 matchup tables into a good majority of the field. And so the better player, if they were on Ezreal Draven, they would just win a lot of the times because they would have tools for every single matchup. And if you drew the tools you needed and then you used all of your resources effectively, then you could realistically win almost any single matchup. Even the bad matchups like the Lurk, the Scout, stuff like that, like these are bad matchups, but they're not that bad. Like 48-52, that is not a bad matchup at all. That's basically even. The only matchup that looks pretty bad here seems to be Pantheon Taric. That's probably because Pantheon Taric just has too many threats for you to deal with, especially if you're not running Ruination like most of these lists are. You're just going to have a hard time to deal with it because you have to deal with the Flame Dragon, you have to deal with the Pantheon, you have to deal with the Taric, you have to deal with just too many threats. And if you're not playing Ruination and board wipe them massively, then you're just going to be in a very sad spot. Especially if they ever draw like a Bastion, you're not going to be in a very good spot. Number 2 deck on ladder right now is Lurk. Which kind of makes sense, it's a little fast deck. Let's see here. Best matchups are into You have Darkness, your Misfortune Scouts deck. It's going to be really any control style deck, any mid-range deck Scouts is going to be good into, or sorry, Lurk's going to be good into, and you're just really, really bad into the Arikin Index. So this is what everyone is playing. It's just your typical Lurk list where it's just Control F for Lurk units, and then you start putting in Ruthless Predator to help out some of the backline or elusive matchups where you're like, damn, I really need to kill this Ari, or I really need to kill this, you know, like Pantheon or Dragon or anything like that. If you really need to kill some type of back row unit, you're in Ruthless Predator, and then that lets you challenge the unit and kill it, which is good. I'm still not a fan of Lurk for the same reason I've never been a fan of Lurk. It just feels to me like there's too much of a coin flip going on, and I just need a little bit more consistency in my lineup, a little bit more consistency in my decks. So that's why I don't really play Lurk. Just I can't get over the statistic of having a like 56% win rate when you go first, and then having a 46% win rate when you go second. Like, that is just not, I can't get over that statistic. And so for that reason, almost that reason alone, I will, the odds of me ever playing Lurk like in a serious tournament or anything are very, very low from this point forward, until Lurk gets like 1 or 2 more good cards to help it out. But yeah, so if you're ever going against a bunch of these control decks, like if you're hitting a bunch of the Vigorsten, if you're hitting the Scouts, stuff like that, you're hitting the Pantheon decks, like, you know, honestly, Lurk feels really, really good for ladder. Next up, number 3, the third most played deck is Scouts. So we saw Scouts kind of rise in popularity due to the fact that it beats Ari Kinnan. The fact that you get to play, at the time, a lot of people were still on Stony Suppressor, and Stony Suppressor made these Ari Kinnan matchups really, really hard. It made the Kinnan spells cost 1 mana, which is not very fun. It made all of the other spells cost, you know, like 3 or 5 mana, which is not very fun. And it really fucked up their tempo-based game plan of, oh, play cheap units, play cheap spells, like outvalue everything. It seems like a lot of people have taken or gone away from that path, so people aren't really playing Stony Suppressor as much, as people are kind of just playing this beatdown variant of the deck. Like, a lot of people started playing Vanguard Sergeants. For those of you that don't know, Vanguard Sergeant is a 3-mana 3/4 that creates a 4 Demacia in your hand, and people were kind of using this as another tool to make Scouts consistent, because everybody knows the problem with Scouts is if you don't have Misfortune on 3, or you don't have Quinn on 5, the win rate of the deck plummets, like absolutely plummets, if you don't draw your champions. So what Vanguard Sergeant does is it's kind of like a pseudo champion, or a pseudo way to either buy time or set up a lethal, where you fill the board up with all of your small units, you play Vanguard Sergeant, and then you eventually get to a spot where you have 10 mana, and you can just play a 4 Demacia, make your units fairly large, full swing, and then if your opponent, you know, chump blocks down and lives, then you can set up for a rally with your Golden Ages or your Relentless Pursuit if you're playing both, or, you know, whichever rally you're playing, and then you swing again with a board full of, you know, like humongous jacked up units. It's basically the same game plan as the Yordle in Arms deck, the like Lulu Fizz style deck, where you just, you know, swarm the board with units, and then you play Yordle in Arms and then rally. Well, in this case, it's you play 4 Demacia and then rally. The difference is in Yordle in Arms decks, like the Lulu Fizz deck, the Yordle in Arms is its main win condition, and it does it effectively by spewing out a bunch of units. And in this deck, that's kind of just like a tertiary win condition, because your main win con is obviously like Misfortune leveling, your secondary win con is going to be like Quinn leveling, and then if you don't have Misfortune or Quinn and you're struggling, then it's the Vanguard Sergeant coming through with the 4 Demacia plus rally. So yeah, so if you're playing against another control deck, this is another one of those Ice Smoke control decks, as well as Ari Kinnan decks. So personally, I think Scouts is one of the best decks to play on ladder at the moment, because it beats the most played deck, which is Sin of Vigor, at 6.5% win rate, and then it also beats a lot of these other Ari Kinnan decks down here. So let me start by saying, like, Sin of Vigor looks like to be the most played deck at 6.5% play rate, but realistically it's still Ari Kinnan because there's multiple iterations. So you have both of these iterations right here at 5.5% play rate. So honestly, these are at like 11% of the ladder is Ari Kinnan. So I still don't think you can play ladder if you're not playing Ari Kinnan, or playing a deck that tries to beat Ari Kinnan, like Spiders or Scouts or something like that. So you can beat the best deck in the meta, and then you get to beat the most played deck in the meta, and then you get to beat the second most played deck in the meta if you play something like the Scouts. And I highly, highly recommend that. I think Scouts looks really, really good. And 4 and 5, we have Ari Kinnan. I'm not going to go into the differences between the two decks, they're basically the same. Shurima has a little bit better odds into the slow control decks like the Senate Viger and the like Avalanche style decks, because you get to play Absolver. It's basically just an extra pump spell, but realistically you get like a 2-card difference, and that's gonna be like maybe 3% like at the most. So they both have the same matchup tables. They're just the extremely consistent decks. They just beat like everything, honestly. If you get Ari Kennen with a good draw, they beat just about everything. They're the most played decks in tournaments, or the most played decks on ladder. Your goal should be either to hard beat Ari Kennen if you're, climbing ladder this week to try to qualify for seasonals, or you just want to try and get a higher rank before the season ends. Then you want to be beating Ari Kennen or playing Ari Kennen, basically. That is my recommendations on how to climb ladder this week, is to play something that hard counters it, or just play Ari Kennen. This deck is absolutely insane. Because you're so crunched on time, there's only 5 weeks left, or 5 weeks. There's only 5 days left to hit the rank you want. I would personally recommend the Ari Kennen Shurima version over the Go Hard version, because it has a tendency to close out games faster. Because if you do find that splash card in the Absolver, a lot of times it can just help you end the game on the spot and on that turn. Whereas if you find the Go Hard splash and this Ari Kennen deck, then it doesn't actually end the game that much faster. It actually takes a long time to build up. You can definitely win more games with Shadow Isles, because you have the grindy, you have the out grind potential now, because you have Go Hards, and eventually you'll draw into a pack your bags. But when you're so crunched on time, I personally just like the Shurima version better. Plus, you see here it has a higher win rate anyway, so it's played more and wins more. So honestly, I think the Shurima version's probably just the best version at this point. Coming in at number 6, the number 6 most played deck is going to be Taric Pantheon. I know I didn't have the Ari decks up on the screen, but it's because there were 2 different versions, and they are basically the exact same. Here it's 3 Homecoming at the bottom, so if you just go look at any Ari Kennen deck, they're all going to look basically the exact same. So number 6, we have Taric Pantheon. So this deck has a couple iterations. It's basically just Pantheon the deck, and you have to consider, do you want to play Pantheon Taric, Pantheon Shyvana, or Mono Pantheon? I personally like Pantheon Taric the most. It has a better game against control, because you have much more threat density, and things like you have the Taric and the Pantheon and the White Flame, and you could have Saga Seeker. So that gives you a lot more threats than the Shyvana version against control, and you're already beating all the other mid-range stuff, which is good. I saw recently on the... I was watching the Mastering Runeterra podcast, or not podcast. I was watching their $5,000 tournament this last weekend, and one of the commentators brought up oh, on paper, Taric Pantheon is supposed to be good against control, but I haven't actually, experienced that, or I don't really think it's that way. What do you guys think? And they started talking about how, why wouldn't I just want to shove, a big dragon at them? Talking about Shyvana. Why wouldn't I just level a Shyvana and swing at them with the big dragon? And then give it overwhelm eventually and stuff like that. And the answer is because against control, they don't have a problem answering one unit. One of the examples they came out with is oh, well, if they're going to palm my Shyvana, or they're going to Will of Ionia my Shyvana, they're just going to do it to Taric also. And yes, while that's true that both of them die to removal spells and to stall spells like that, the biggest difference is against Shyvana, if you don't have a removal spell or a bound spell or a stun spell, Shyvana just gets blocked by a 1/1. With Taric, if you don't have that removal spell or the bound spell or the stun spell, you can't just chump block the Taric with the 1/1, because he will get you a bunch of value. If you cast the Zenith Blade on Taric, then, first of all, chump blocking doesn't do anything because you get overwhelmed, but then he's also giving overwhelm to something else. If you just chump block him with the 1/1, he's still casting Bastion on something else. He's still getting an extra rally on something else. Sharp Sight, Pale Cascade, Guiding Touch. He's casting all of these extra value spells on something else, even if you block him. So not having the removal spell is way more devastating against the Taric Pantheon version than it is the Shyvana version, because worst case scenario, you just block Shyvana. Worst case scenario against Taric is you have to chump block the Taric or the thing that Taric is supporting, and there's still a bunch of value getting gained there. So that's why I like the Taric Pantheon version over all the other ones, and that's why you see it being played more, because it just has better matchup tables across the board. Coming in the last 2 decks here is we have the Lulu Fizz Eordalan Arms deck. So Lulu Fizz Yordling Arms. You see here, it's basically just create unit to the deck. This deck has pretty decent matchups across the table. It's really, really good into the slower control style decks because you just print infinite units. Like, they actually cannot remove as many units as you put down. Eventually, you'll play things like the Yordle Captain, and then now you're printing infinite units, and they're getting buffed when you're playing them. So it's infinite units that are getting big, which is really funny. And then you eventually just end the game with a Yordling Arm. So you play things like a Poro Cannon, and you can just get a couple elusive units, Yordling Arms, there you go. If you play Poro Cannon, and just those 2 Poros alone with Yordling Arms, that's 10 damage. So if you can just get your opponent down to 10 or somewhere close to there, you play Poro Cannon, Yordling Arms, that's half of their HP just gone. And then on top of that, you have Burn and 3 Get Excited, 3 Poke Sticks, 3 Mystic Shots. Like, you play so much burn in this deck. Looping Telescope could find you things that have impact. Your Mayor can find you something that has impact. That your opponent can't really afford to take the little damage from, like, oh, the Zonodurge is just going to hit me for 2. That's not a big deal. Like, you know, Looping Telescope's just going to hit me for 2. That's not a big deal. You can only take so much damage when you're playing against Yordling Arms before you have to be legitimately afraid of just, like, get excited, Mystic Shot. Like, that's again almost half your HP. So if they hit you with the Yordling Arms into some Get Exciteds, you could just randomly die from 20 over the course of 2 turns, and that is absolutely insane. I think this is one of the most underrated decks. The win rate isn't super impressive. It's a 56% win rate, but you see here when the people play it well, like Fake Hero, the #1 player on this deck has an 82.5% win rate on this deck, which is like fucking bonkers. Like, it's absolutely insane. Over the course of 34 matches, 80-something% win rate is absolutely nuts. So all these other people up here that have like 80% win rate, 1, they're doing it with the best deck in the game, and 2, like, they have as high 80% win rate, but they also have like a third of the games. They have less games than a Fake Hero does, and he still has a higher win rate. So he has a higher win rate than both of these players on the respective deck, and he has more games played, which is kind of nutty. So for those of you wondering, in the bottom right corner, that's 3 Yordles Arms. So yeah, I think this is definitely a sleeper deck. I think more people should be playing Yordling Arms. I don't really know why more people aren't playing Yordling Arms, but I would recommend you play this out. The games are going to be quicker, and you only need to, you know, have 150 points to qualify, you know, or like to guarantee qualification. Probably only 100 to qualify. That's really only like 6 matches or so. So if you can just win 6 matches in a row, then you're there. And Lulu Fizz is definitely one of those decks to do it with. And coming in at number 8 is going to be Teemo Caitlyn. This deck is not very good, really, at all. It's kind of just a fun deck. I think this is getting up there because we are reaching the end of the season, so people are kind of just having more fun with things. But, I mean, it's up there in play rate, right? Like, it's one of the most played decks in the game. So you kind of have to respect it. You have to have decks that beat it. And that's one of the things that you have to look for. So while this deck is not very good, you have to kind of wonder why people are playing it, and it's more or less just to have fun. It does look here like it's supposed to beat control decks because of all of the shrooms. So if you're up against a lot of the Cinnaviger decks, the Iceborne Legacy decks, the like slower control, see all the decks that beat here are control, because control decks can't deal with mushrooms effectively. Like, they can remove units, but what they can't remove is damage in their deck. So if you're playing against only control decks, or if you hate losing to control decks, then Teemo Caitlyn is the deck for you. You just trap their deck and you win. However, if you look here on the right side, you see the deck loses to every other deck being played right now. It loses to Lurk, Ari Kennen, Pantheon, Scouts, Poro, Spiders, Silver Auction, more Pantheon. Like, this deck just loses to really everything, and just has a really good time against control and a really bad time against everything else. So that's going to be it for the meta breakdown for this Meta Monday on the 8 most played decks in Masters Ladder. I hope this helps you find a deck that you personally want to enjoy and play to try and hit your final goal and get ready for seasonals and prepare for it. I would personally recommend just Ari Kennen because the deck is extremely strong. But other than Ari Kennen, I'd have to say Lulu Fizz, because both decks are extremely strong, and I think Lulu Fizz is more slept on, and people are going to feel less comfortable playing against Lulu Fizz. So the Lulu Fizz Yordling Arms deck or Yaya deck is going to have a more, I guess, like free wins because people just don't play into it correctly. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys make it to whatever your goal is. Let me know in the comments down below what decks you're thinking about bringing to the seasonals if you plan on playing in seasonal championship this weekend. I personally already have my lineup locked in, but I got to keep it a secret. So I'll hopefully tell you guys on Saturday. If you want to see my point of view of seasonals being streamed, I'll stream it this Saturday over at twitch.tv/emotional. So make sure and go follow over there. I tend to done pretty well in a couple of seasonals. Not every seasonal, but a couple seasonals. So maybe this is one of the seasonals I do really well in. Who knows? You'll have to show up and find out yourselves. So again, twitch.tv/emotional. I'll be streaming my point of view of seasonal championship this weekend. That's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one.